So Prince William just quietly became the legal owner of a massive private estate that Camilla had spent years treating like her personal theft, packing it with her relatives and handing out cushy jobs to her sister. And the absolute second the paperwork cleared, he fired every last one of them. No warning, no press release, just a routine financial document with a name missing and a message so loud it basically echoed through every palace in the country. And what he's now preparing to do next has apparently sent Camilla into a spiral so deep that sources say she's genuinely terrified about where she's even going to live. Because the homes she walks through every single day, she doesn't own a single brick of any of them. And the man who does just proved he's not feeling sentimental. Before we get into the fallout, if you love royal deep dives where we actually look at the receipts, hit subscribe to our channel real quick. We break this stuff down every week. Now, let's get into it. The whole thing kicked off on September 8th, 2022. The moment Queen Elizabeth II took her last breath at Balmoral Castle. In that single instant before the world had even fully processed the announcement, a chain reaction fired off inside the British royal family that is still tearing through relationships today. Charles became king, obviously, that part everyone saw coming. But something else happened in that same breath. Something that barely made the headlines but carried consequences that are absolutely massive. William, who was 40 years old at the time, became the Duke of Cornwall. It was automatic by law. The second his father became monarch. William became the sole owner of one of the oldest and most powerful private estates on earth. We're not talking about a ceremonial title here. The Duchy of Cornwall is worth about $1.2 billion. It covers 135,000 acres spread across 23 counties in England and Wales. It includes almost the entire Isles of Scilly, this gorgeous group of islands off the coast of Cornwall. It includes half of Dartmoor and Devon, ancient farms, historic castles, tenant properties, holiday cottages, and decades of careful financial investments. This estate was created back in 1337 by King Edward III specifically for his son Edward the Black Prince, who became the first ever Duke of Cornwall. The rule was simple, and it has never changed. The estate belongs to the monarch's eldest son, and heir to the throne. Nearly 700 years of history, and now it belonged to William. By 2025, William was earning about $30 million a year from this estate alone. He pays tax on it voluntarily because the law doesn't even require him to. That's the level of financial independence we're talking about. But here's where the story gets darker, and this is the part that most people missed entirely. The Duchy of Cornwall was the exact same estate that had been funding Charles's household for decades. While Charles was Duke of Cornwall, this estate generated his income. It funded his lifestyle, his properties, his projects. And during those same years, Charles was carrying on the affair with Camilla that completely destroyed his marriage to Diana. The affair that Diana described in her own words as making her feel like there were three people in her marriage. What most people never saw was what it did to her behind closed doors. Knowing her husband was choosing another woman over and over again had eaten through her self-esteem completely. According to insiders, she would pull staff aside, fear swimming in her eyes, and ask them quietly, "Am I beautiful enough?" When they told her yes, she would shake her head and whisper, "Don't lie to the princess," like a small girl forcing back tears. A woman the whole world called beautiful could not see it in herself anymore because the man she married had made her feel invisible. There were nights when palace staff heard muffled crying coming from her room at 3 in the morning. Many nights she slept in a separate room from Charles, alone in one of the grandest buildings in the world, completely invisible to the public, and completely hollow inside. She grew so self-conscious, so eaten alive by the feeling that she was losing her husband to another woman, that people close to her described her as a person slowly disappearing. The inside the affair that William and Harry watched consume their mother from the time they were small boys. The lifestyle that this very estate funded now belonged to Diana's son. And there was one more detail that almost nobody discussed. The Duchy of Cornwall was designed specifically by King Edward so that heirs could never be financially controlled or pressured by the reigning monarch. William owning it meant he was financially independent of his own father, independent of everyone. And it had very modern consequences that Camilla's family was about to feel. Because inside that estate, collecting a royal paycheck for nearly 20 years, was a woman named Annabel Elliot Queen, Camilla's younger sister. She had been hired back in 2005 to design the interiors of douche properties across Cornwall, Wales, and the Isles of Scilly. She was hired without any competitive process. She got the contract because her sister married the man who owned the estate. That was the entire basis of the arrangement, and for 20 years it worked perfectly, until the day William became her boss. What happened next sent a message through Camilla's family that hit like a thunderclap. Before we get to that, though, you need to understand exactly who Camilla was and what she had been doing inside this family for the past 2 decades. Because William's actions did not happen in a vacuum, they were the answer to something. And that something is far darker than most people realize. Long before William had the power to do anything about it, he was watching. and what he was watching would have destroyed a lesser man. It started with a promise. Before Charles married Camilla in April 2005, William and Harry went to their father privately. They made one quiet, specific request. Harry later wrote about the conversation in his memoir, Spare. He wrote that they told their father, "We support you. We endorse Camilla. We will welcome her into the family. Just please do not marry her. Just be together," Harry wrote. The boys knew that a wedding would drag their mother's name back through every newspaper in the world. It would force the whole country to compare Diana to the woman who had been her husband's mistress throughout their marriage, and neither of them wanted that. Charles listened to both of his sons, and then he married her anyway to manage the public reaction. Buckingham Palace made a specific public announcement. When Charles eventually became king, Camilla would be known as Princess Consort. She would never be queen. That was the deal. William accepted it. He attended the wedding, shook hands, smiled for the cameras, and carried the weight of what it all meant somewhere deep in private where nobody could see it. In February 2022, something happened that many people did not fully understand at the time. Queen Elizabeth II released a message marking her 70 years on the throne. It was meant to be a moment of reflection, a moment of legacy, but buried inside that message was a decision that would change everything. She said it was her sincere wish that Camilla be known as Queen Consort when King Charles became king. At first, people assumed it was an act of acceptance, maybe even forgiveness. But those close to the Queen told a very different story. This was not about love or approval. This was fear. By this point, the Queen was dying. Her health was failing fast, and she knew it. She could see what was coming. The crown would soon pass to Charles, and with it a storm she would not be there to control. One insider put it bluntly. She wasn't blessing Camilla, she was containing something. In private, the Queen had used words that never reached the public. She had described Camilla as dangerous. She had watched for years, she had seen how far things could go, and in those final years she made a decision that felt less like approval and more like surrender. She gave Camilla what she wanted, not because she believed in her, but because she feared what might happen if she didn't. It was the act of a woman trying to put out a fire she knew she would not live long enough to fight. Then came May 2023, the coronation, and something else quietly changed. The word consort began to disappear until suddenly it was gone. Camilla was no longer Queen Consort. She was simply Queen, the exact title she had always wanted, the one both princesses had once made clear should never happen. And yet there it was, official, complete. One source later said what many had suspected all along. She was never going to settle for anything less. William had watched every version of the original promise get rewritten, and he said nothing. But the resentment was described by sources as deep and carefully hidden. One source put it plainly, William is more diplomatic than Harry. So he has tried to disguise his resentment. The way Camilla betrayed his mother has not been forgotten. And there was far more to resent than just the title. Camilla did not simply wait for her position to grow. She worked for it, and she had a very specific way of working. When she wanted Charles to see William or Harry in a negative light, she would go to him privately and whisper her version of events into his ear. She shaped what Charles thought about his own son slowly and quietly from the inside. Royal biographer Christopher Anderson confirmed that Camilla was known to do exactly this, feeding Charles her assessments of William and Harry's shortcomings when nobody else was in the room. But that was only one side of her operation. The other side was the press. Camilla had built relationships with key British journalists, and her team used those relationships as weapons. When she needed to look good, stories appeared. When she needed someone else to look bad, those stories appeared too. Her team planted the false story that Meghan had made Kate cry in the days before the 2018 royal wedding. That story tore through the British press and caused real damage inside the family. Everyone in the palace knew it was a lie. Charles's team refused to correct it. William and Harry went directly to their father and told him what his communications team was doing. Charles shouted at them and told William he was being paranoid. Camilla had built a system where every door they tried to open led back to her. William was not paranoid. He was watching clearly. He was storing every single thing away, and he was waiting for the day he had the power to answer it. The arrangement with Annabelle was built from the same blueprint. Camilla's sister was handed the lucrative royal contract without competing for it, and she held it for 20 years. But what made it almost unbearable was the detail beneath the surface, because long before the contract, there was something else, something hidden. Back when King Charles III was still married to Princess Diana, the affair with Camilla had to be hidden. And there was one place where that happened. A quiet country house in Dorset, Annabelle's house. It was in the village of Stowpain, isolated, private, safe from attention. That was where they met weekend after weekend. Annabelle gave them the space, the cover, the protection. And that's what makes what came next so difficult to ignore. Years later, after everything had come out, after the damage was done, after Diana was gone, Annabelle was now being paid because of the employment Camilla gave her. Paid through the estate tied to Diana's legacy, paid from the estate connected to William. When William finally had the power to act, the question was never whether he would. The question was only how. The moment William became Duke of Cornwall, he knew exactly what he was going to do about Annabelle Elliot. He would fire her. He did not call a meeting. He did not send a letter. He did not make a single public statement. He simply waited for the Duke of Cornwall to publish its routine annual financial accounts. It is a document that almost nobody outside royal financial circles ever reads. A dry technical record of income, expenses, and staffing across the estate, but this time, something was different. Annabel Elliott's name was gone. 20 years of royal employment ended without a single public word. To understand how much that removal actually meant, you need to understand how much Annabel had built during those 2 decades. And then you will understand exactly how much William just took away. Annabel was genuinely talented and widely respected. In 2014, she was named the 5th most influential female interior designer in the United Kingdom. She had designed the interiors of 12 holiday cottages on the Isles of Scilly. She had worked on properties at Restormel Castle. She had transformed the Elwyn Iowa or Mode estate in Wales. She had taken a rundown barn at Dumfries House in Ayr, Scotland, and converted it into a lavish guest house that was used for weddings and private events. For nearly 20 years, her work was threaded through some of the most beautiful properties in the entire royal collection. None of that saved her. Royal expert Emmy Griffiths explained the situation with careful language, the kind of language people use when they are trying not to say something too directly. She said that since Prince William had taken over as Duke of Cornwall, he had taken Annabel off the payroll, and that this had caused a few ripples and a few headlines. The official statement from sources was equally careful. They said the decision was no reflection on her work. It was not about her work. Everyone knew that a separate royal source was considerably less careful. This source said William's move sent a message, and that he wanted to cut away the royal hangers-on and reduce the lavish spending his father had built up during his time managing the duché. Cut away the royal hangers-on. That is the phrase that matters. That is what William thought of the arrangement that his father had created for his wife's family. At the same time as Annabel disappeared from the payroll, William was filling the douche with people he had chosen himself. He brought in Harry Aubrey Fletcher and William Van Cutsem, both of whom were his personal friends and godparents to his children, Prince George and Prince Louis. The message did not need any explanation. Out went Camilla's family. In came William's people. Every position Charles had filled with someone from his world was now being reviewed. Every arrangement built around Camilla's comfort was being examined. On the surface, the financial cost was modest. Annabel had been paid anywhere between about £20,000 and £82,000 per year. Against a $1.2 billion estate, those numbers are almost nothing. But the symbolism was enormous, and everyone inside the royal family felt it. It told Camilla that her family's access to the crown was not permanent. It told the royal household that the transition from Charles's era to William's had already quietly begun. And this was not the only shot William fired. Every year at Christmas, the royal family gathers at Sandringham. It is one of the most important family traditions in the monarchy. Sandringham is where generations of royals have spent the holiday together. William will one day inherit it. Camilla decided to invite her son Tom Parker B.S., her child from her first marriage, to the family Christmas there. Reports came out that a furious William had made his position clear he would not attend the main Christmas lunch if Tom was present. Camilla invited Tom anyway. Tom confirmed to the Telegraph that his mother had personally asked him to come, telling him she had not had Christmas with him in a long time. Tom came. William did not attend the main gathering at the big house. He stayed with Kate and their children at Anmer Hall, their home on the Sandringham estate, and spent Christmas there instead. Camilla had just forced the future King of England out of his own family Christmas at an estate he will one day own because she invited her son and refused to back down. That's not a small family disagreement. That's a power struggle playing out over seating arrangements and turkey lunch. Then in September 2025, something happened publicly that made detention impossible to ignore. During Donald Trump's state visit to Windsor Castle, Kate fell into easy and natural conversation with Melania Trump. The two women connected warmly. Then from the side, Camilla stepped in. What happened next lasted only a second, but it changed the entire tone of the moment. Camilla raised her hand and made a short, firm motion toward Kate. It was a signal, and it said, "Move, step aside, leave." It wasn't verbal, but it was unmistakable. A body language expert, Judy James, later described it bluntly. It looked like she was pulling rank, almost shooing her away. The clip spread everywhere. Millions watched it, slowed it down, replayed it because what it showed was uncomfortable. The Queen appeared to be dismissing the future Queen in public in front of world leaders. Behind the scenes, the reaction was immediate. Prince William had spent years keeping things calm, but this was different. One source said it hit him hard. That wasn't just awkward. That crossed the line because this wasn't a private disagreement anymore. It was a public message, and it had just been sent to the entire world. By that point, something even more unsettling was already happening behind closed doors. King Charles III, still battling cancer, had started having quiet conversations with his son about what would happen after he was gone. One insider described the tone as urgent and personal. "Leave Camilla alone." That was the message from Charles to his son. Protect her. Don't turn against her. Don't push her out. It was a dying king spending what could be his final years trying to secure his wife's future by appealing directly to the one person who could take it away. That single detail tells you more about where this is heading than anything else. Because William's answer was not given in words. It was given in a Christmas he did not attend. It was given in the friends he hired to replace the woman his father's wife had employed. But the firing of Annabelle Elliott and the Christmas standoff were only what people could see. The move that Camilla understood at the deepest level, the one that would define the rest of her life, had nothing to do with a payroll and everything to do with four walls and a roof. Because William had not just inherited an estate, he had inherited the home she called her own. And the day was coming when she would have to ask him whether she could stay. Right now, Queen Camilla's life looks completely secure. She moves between Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, Sandringham, and Balmoral. She has official royal duties. She has the full support and protection of her husband, the king. She holds the title Her Majesty the Queen. She is patron or president of more than 90 charities. From the outside, her position looks solid and permanent, but every single thing she has is tied to one man, and that man has cancer. Here is something that most people do not fully understand, and it is the most important thing in this entire story. Sandringham House in Norfolk and Balmoral Castle in Scotland are not owned by the British government. They are not crown properties managed by an institution. They are privately owned the same way a family home is privately owned. Queen Elizabeth II inherited both of them from her father, King George V. When Elizabeth died in September 2022, they passed directly to Charles. When Charles dies, they pass directly to William. Balmoral is worth about $140 million. Sandringham is worth about $65 million. Together, that is over $200 million in private property that Camilla currently walks through, sleeps in, and calls home. None of it belongs to her. Not in any legal sense, not in any document that exists anywhere. One day these homes will belong to William, the man who just removed her sister from his payroll without a single public word. Balmoral, in particular, carries a weight that goes far beyond its financial value. William was 15 years old and staying at Balmoral with his brother Harry in August 1997 when their father came to their rooms before dawn to tell them their mother was dead. Diana had been killed in a car crash in Paris. William and Harry walked those grounds that morning, completely destroyed. Two boys trying to survive something no child should ever have to survive. And the detail that sits underneath all of this like a stone is that when Charles received the news from Paris, the first person he called was not the Queen, who was also at Balmoral. The first person he called was Camilla. She reassured him Diana would be fine. Then he called back with the news that she was gone. Camilla was the first to know she was there for Charles's grief before his own sons were even awake. Camilla now walks those same grounds as Queen William will own them. One day when Charles dies, the legal transfer is instant and automatic, exactly as it was in 2022 when William became Duke of Cornwall. William becomes king. The second his father is gone, Kate becomes queen. And Camilla loses the title the Queen entirely. It passes to Kate. Camilla would most likely become Queen Dowager, which means the widow of a king. It is not a shameful designation, but it is a step back that the entire world will notice. Here's the part that makes it genuinely frightening for Camilla. Her title is not protected by birth, she is royal by marriage only. That means it will be entirely up to William to decide what she is called after Charles is gone. Charles stripped Diana of her title, Her Royal Highness, after their divorce. William was there for that. He watched it happen to his mother. He knows exactly how the mechanism works, and now he could get revenge for his mother. He could take back everything Camilla took from his mother. Sandringham and Balmoral will belong to William. Whether Camilla can continue living in those homes will depend entirely on what William decides. There is no legal protection that guarantees her access. She will be a guest if he extends that courtesy. And here is the detail that makes her situation almost impossible to escape. Camilla had one piece of property in her life that was completely and only hers. It was called Ray Mill House, a private home in Wiltshire that she had owned before she ever married Charles. She used to talk about it with real warmth. She called the garden there the best therapy in the world. It was her retreat, her private ground, the one place where she could close the door and simply be herself away from the weight of royal life. But then she sold it. She sold the only home that was truly hers. The reasons given were that she wanted to commit fully to her royal life and her role beside Charles, but the consequence of that decision is devastating and irreversible. When Charles dies, Camilla will have no private property of her own anywhere. She will live wherever William decides she should live. The woman who spent 20 years engineering her way to the top of the most powerful family in Britain, who managed the press, who whispered in Charles's ear, who planted stories, who pushed out the future king from Christmas, who dismissed the future queen with a wave of her hand in front of the entire world, will now entirely depend on the goodwill of the man she helped push out of his own family home. She built the trap herself. She walked into it with her eyes.